Hello everyone, I hope you're all having a great day today. And with the Acolyte series being wrapped up, I thought it would be a good time to rank all the live action Star Wars series. Keep in mind though, this is just my opinion, and I would love to hear your ranking in the comment section down below. Also, since we have 3 seasons of The Mandalorian, I'll be ranking the different seasons separately because the quality is a little bit different. And without any further ado, let's hop right into the ranking. So coming in last place easily is The Acolyte, and this is the series that felt the most just like a Disney product with no heart put into it. The characters are not very interesting, a lot of the acting is stiff. This easily also has the worst dialogue in all of Star Wars. It was honestly painful to watch. It was pretty boring since you weren't invested into the characters and that kind of stuff. And I really don't know anyone that's actually watched this show other than people that are just doing it to make videos like this. And this is really the only show on this list that I think is just straight up bad. I don't think it has any redeeming qualities except maybe the cinematography is fine. Coming in at number 7 is The Mandalorian Season 3. Now, there is a big gap between number 8 and number 7. And when it comes to this season, there are good qualities in it, like especially the last 2 episodes are actually pretty good. There's some fun to be had with the Mandalorian and Grogu and all the other characters in here. But when you compare it to the other 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, it comes off as pretty underwhelming. The first couple episodes aren't really the most exciting. They're just kind of setting stuff up. And they involve him taking the special bath to make him a Mandalorian again. That was set up in the book of Boba Fett. The execution just really isn't quite as good as it should be. And then you also have the 3rd episode, which just focuses on the doctor guy, and it's just an off-brand episode of Andor. The 4th episode was kind of just a filler episode. The 5th episode was decent. And then the 6th episode was a little bit fun, but overall kind of stupid, where they just had Jack Black, Lizzo, Christopher Lloyd, just the most random celebrities they could get just for the sake of it. And I did have some fun with it, but on a writing level, it's not really anything that great. So overall, I just don't think this season did the character justice. Coming in at number 6 is Ahsoka, and I know a lot of people actually really like this and would have it higher in the ranking. They've said it's the closest thing to the original Star Wars trilogy we've gotten in a while, and I can kind of see where they're coming from. And overall, I think it's a decent show. However, I do think it is a little bit mediocre because the plot really isn't anything that long, and it is stretched out into 8 episodes when it probably could have just been 6 or 7. Still though, there's some cool action in here, some good stuff they do with the villains, especially with bringing Thrawn back. But my main issue with this show is that Ahsoka really doesn't feel like the main character. She had been in other series like The Mandalorian, Clone Wars, Rebels, but when she finally got her own show, I feel like she had the least interesting character development. There's a little bit of neat stuff they do with the flashbacks of the Clone Wars and Anakin Skywalker, but that's pretty much about it. I feel like all the Rebels characters that they brought into live action kind of just stole the show. So I thought it was fine, but not as good as it could have been. Coming in at number 5 is the book of Boba Fett, and this show is probably the most inconsistent in quality. Part of that is just because there are different storylines going on here with flashbacks of what Boba Fett was doing in between Return of the Jedi and The Mandalorian, and then stuff in the present time that's setting up what he's doing in Mos Eisley. And then you have a couple episodes that don't even have him in there, it's just about The Mandalorian. So just naturally, there are some amazing sequences, and then stuff in this show also that's not that great. But a lot of people would just call this bad, and I don't think that's the case at all. There is a lot to appreciate, but they could have presented it in a better way, where there was just a better balance of flashbacks, what's going on in the present, what's going on with Mando, instead of all these extremes. Boba Fett is my favorite Star Wars character, and I do think that what they do with his character in this show is actually pretty good. I know he comes off as less aggressive, but I actually do think it makes sense since he's in a different stage of life, although I was hoping there would be more flashbacks of him in his prime. So hopefully Disney makes a movie or show about him when he was younger. So as I said, not everything in this show is great, but there is some pretty good action, visuals, and all the stuff you would want from Star Wars. Coming in at number 4 is the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, and I think out of all the shows on this list, this easily had the most potential. However, the execution just wasn't quite there. Now, similar to Book of Boba Fett, a lot of people just don't like this show at all, and I don't think that's the case, that it's a bad show, but it is very flawed. Now, on the positive side, I like what they do with the dynamic between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader. There's just some really good character development, and I think the broken hero story makes perfect sense in this scenario. Also, Ewan McGregor returning for the role is just something that's really cool. I mean, you can't take that for granted. And I think the mission that he goes on to rescue Leia is pretty good. The actress that played her did a good job. And there's just a lot of neat stuff this does to expand the Star Wars world and dive into the lore with the rise of the Empire and Jedi on the run, all that neat stuff. But as I said, the execution wasn't quite there. Visually, it was lacking a little bit. Because of that, people are making movie edits to fix it, which, speaking of which, it probably should have been a movie instead of a series. It just would have worked better that way. And also, on the negative side, there are just some dumb moments in here, like when Obi-Wan's hiding Leia in his trench coat to escape in an unnecessary episode that was just a quest to rescue her once again. And when Leia's outrunning these grown adults who are just hitting their heads on tree branches, it feels like a cartoon at times. And also, the character Reva is one of the most poorly written characters in all of Star Wars. Just not really a great villain. She doesn't have character development until like the 5th episode, then it immediately kills her off, brings her back to life, just for her to attack Luke for some reason, which I just think all around was dumb. Her motivation also doesn't make sense because she had trauma from younglings dying when she was a youngling herself, and as a result, she decided it was a good idea to kill younglings and hunt Jedi. So at the end of the day, this show delivered moments that I wanted, and the central story is very good, but at the same time, there are a lot of bad moments in it as well. Coming in at number 3 is The Mandalorian Season 1, and this was the whole thing that started all these Star Wars series. So just back then, there was more novelty to seeing Star Wars episodes because we never seen a live action Star Wars show before, and it sets up a good character in The Mandalorian, and there's just a really nice relationship that he has with Grogu, his adopted son. Of course, back then he was just called the Child, and even though he goes on a lot of side quests in this show, there's a lot of character development that happens in them, and it's just okay because it's kind of based off of westerns where obviously he's going on a lot of side quests, but there's still a central story going along at the same time. Obviously, Moff Gideon was a really good villain too. And there were just a lot of characters in here that became instantly iconic, so this was just a really neat show what they were able to do here. Coming in at number 2 is Andor. And this one probably had the best quality writing, the most finished CGI, some of the best acting and dialogue in all of Star Wars. It just had some really deep themes. It was pretty slow paced, kind of similar to Lord of the Rings, but it was still very good quality. And so it just made a group of characters that you were invested in, and you get to see the different parts of the galaxy, and it just really explores the Empire rising. And there were just some really good payoff moments, like in episode 3, as well as episode 6, the prison escape in episode 10, and then the season finale in episode 12. It's a pretty straightforward show, but it's effective. But coming in at number 1 is The Mandalorian Season 2. This is where I feel like they just did the best job of leaning into what worked in the first season of The Mandalorian, of him going on side quests while still having a central story, still bonding with Grogu. And here they're able to make a lot more characters show up, like characters from the first season, as well as characters like Ahsoka and Boba Fett, and making all of these different elements connect. It just does such a good job of that. And once you get to the later episodes where Grogu is kidnapped and they need to rescue him, there's just a sense of urgency, this tension. And visually speaking, it's very good. The action is also very good. And it ends with kind of a bittersweet ending of Luke Skywalker taking Grogu, although that was undone later on. But at the end of the day, I think this was the best balance of like quality writing as well as just some fun moments, some great action, all the stuff you'd want from Star Wars. But again, let me know your ranking of the Star Wars series in the comment section down below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.